All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our our community education class, Stop Wasting Food, 10 Tips to Save You Money. So if you have been to our classes before, you may recognize me, Isabel, the health educator at Bronson. And I would like to introduce our new health educator and registered dietitian, Tina Guajardo, and she is going to be your educator for this class. Um, We do have closed captioning available, so if you need closed captioning, feel free to put those up on your screen. And this is being recorded, so if you do not want to be on video, feel free to keep your video off. And I will let Tina go ahead and introduce herself. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks, Isabel, for facilitating this presentation for us today. It is much appreciated. My name, as Isabel stated, is Tina Guajardo. I am a registered dietitian and health educator, new with this department, and excited to be presenting this topic to you on wasting food and our food budget.
And then right before Tina starts, I do want to mention that in our chat, we have a survey, and we'd really appreciate it if you, after this class, were to fill out this survey. This really just kind of helps guide our community education classes as we move forward. We are in the process of planning our Q2 classes and would love to have input from you. So after this class, if you don't mind clicking on this survey, we would greatly appreciate it. Without further ado, here we go.
All right. Thanks, Isabel. So yes, today we are going to be talking about, tips on how to stop wasting food so we can save a little money, because we know that unfortunately the cost of groceries have increased pretty tremendously over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping that you guys take something away and find something useful from today's presentation, and I appreciate you guys being here. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So we will be asking some questions. We've got some poll questions. I would love for you guys to unmute and answer and participate during today's presentation. So thanks again for being here, and we'll get started. So today's goals are that we are going to learn about the impact that food waste can have on your home food budget. We're going to discuss 10 different tips on how to decrease food waste and save a little money. And then at the end, we're going to review 3 different recipes that cost less than $3 per serving. So before we get started and talking on some food waste, I want to show you guys this video from SaveTheFood.com, and we'll have that reference listed at the end of the presentation as well. And it shows us the life and times of a strawberry from production to its unfortunate end as food waste. So please enjoy.
Sweet baby, I'll travel the world for you. I love you.
Can we get strawberries?
No, honey.
Please?
Okay.
So again, that video is from savethefood.com, and you can see that a lot of time and energy, labor is put into our food production. It is unfortunate to see our food get wasted. So I want to hear from you guys. Go ahead and unmute yourself or go ahead and write in the chat for us. How does food waste impact you? I'll give you guys a few minutes to unmute or give you an answer in the chat. How does food waste impact you?
Well, I just have to say that was a very cute video.
I was happy to find it. That little girl wanted the strawberries so bad.
I know, right? For me, I would say that food impact, exactly just like there was put in the chat, is wasted money.
Absolutely.
Also, it hurts my heart a little bit when I have to throw something away because I didn't use it quick enough.
Yeah, I know, you're like, oh, I just needed to get to that 2 days ago, get that in the freezer, so I could have utilized that at a later date. Yes, wasted money. That's what we're thinking about, isn't it? Charlene, you shared?
No, yeah, I agree with that. And I feel guilty at times because, when I'm shopping, there's just 2 of us I'm cooking for, and everything is in big packaging. And I'm like, I don't want all this. I just want enough for us. This will go bad before I can use it or something. Yeah. And I've tried to talk with people at Meijer about doing some more small packaging, but they're not listening. So,
well, yeah, keep advocating. That's great. I never even actually thought about that consideration to talk to the grocery stores and the managers about offering more servings for just 1 or 2 people. Cooking for the masses is a little bit easier, but when you're cooking just for 1 or 2, definitely way more challenging. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I think food budget is the number one thing that we're thinking about. Obviously, we can think about big picture as well, but what impacts us the most is the amount of money that we might spend and then put into the trash can. Thank you guys for sharing. I appreciate that.
And a lot of times, like, I will try to break food down and package it into smaller quantities, but then you've got, extra freezer space, extra containers to do that, extra time.
Yep, absolutely. And we're going to talk about some of those tips today. So thank you for bringing that up. So we can see here that the research shows that the average American family of 4 people wastes around $1,500 a year on food that they don't even eat. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I could do a little bit of fun stuff with $1,500. So it is a worthy cause to try to decrease how much food is wasted. And as you saw in the video, about 40% of all the food that we produce globally doesn't even end up getting consumed. So when we're thinking about the big picture and the resources that are put into food production, it's quite costly, not just to us personally, but globally too. And then unfortunately, you and me, the average folk, are the number one largest source of food waste. In addition, the consumers, you and me, waste more food than groceries and grocery stores and restaurants combined, which was a pretty shocking fact that I had not known. So again, all of this information is from that resource that I mentioned earlier, savethefood.com. So we already have identified that some of the benefits of reducing food waste is more money in our own pocket. Unfortunately, the number one matter that is placed in landfills is food. So by learning some new tricks to reduce food waste, hopefully we can send less food to the landfills. And as I've mentioned, we spend a lot of labor and soil nutrition and water resources on food production for it to ultimately go to the waste. So again, I want to hear from you guys. Some of you guys have already shared, but maybe you will share some additional items here. What are you guys currently doing to decrease food waste, or maybe what have you done in the past that you've kind of gotten away from to help decrease food waste? We've got somebody sharing in the post here, composting most of the time. Great. If you would maybe share a little bit more about your composting journey and maybe how you got started, we would love to hear about that.
And while they're typing out their composting or unmuting for it, I'd also like to say too, I've learned safe food practices, like how to safely freeze your food and safely store your food to A, help decrease food waste, and B, make sure that we're not doing any potential food safety hazards.
Yeah, understanding those labels and how to freeze is definitely number one as well.
Planning out meals helps,
Yes.
but then you have to actually stick with that plan.
Yeah, sticking with the plan, absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about meal planning. People get very intimidated by meal planning and thinking that it has to be very detailed, but it does not. And we're going to talk about that. Thanks for adding a little bit more about composting. So you're saying that your bin is small, but makes you feel like you didn't entirely waste the food. Yes, absolutely. And so I know that I have a friend that does a lot of composting of all of her scraps, and she uses that. She just throws it out into her little garden area that she plants in the spring to kind of provide some more nutrients to the soil. Great. I get a little intimidated by composting and what to do with it and how to store of it properly. So would love to hear even more about that later if you would be willing to share. So thank you guys for participating and how you currently are doing some work to decrease your food waste. Thank you. All right, so let's get started on those 10 tips. So my first tip on how to decrease food waste is to complete a 30-day food waste challenge, right? We probably all can think back to the time that we put some food into the trash can, but by completing a 30-day food waste challenge, we can identify maybe where some of those trends are. What am I throwing away most often? So in this 30-day food waste challenge, you would take your first 5 days of your food waste challenge, or maybe 7 days, depending upon maybe how often you go grocery shopping, and you would look at what food am I throwing away? Am I throwing away extra milk, pouring it down the drain because I didn't get to it in time? Is it the leftovers from Sunday and now it's Saturday and I forgot to use those? What is the food waste that you are throwing away? Number one is identifying what it is so we can make some changes there. And then over the next 25 days, working to reduce that food waste in general. And our next tip number 2, is understand food label dates, like kind of what Isabel was referring to. We've got all these food label dates on packaging, and what do they mean? We've got best by dates, we've got sell by dates, we've got use by and freeze by. What does that mean to us? So we're going to take a little bit of time to discuss each of these. So your best if used by or best before date is not actually a purchase or safety date. It is simply just referring to the date in which you're going to have the best quality or flavor from the product. So let's say you have a can of carrots and it's saying, best by November 14th, 2020. Well, now we're in 2023, right? Is it necessarily safe to eat? It's going to be, it could be safe as long as it's been stored properly. It just might not be at the best quality. So it does not necessarily need to be thrown away at this point. Our next date that we'll talk about is the sell by date. So sell by is often you might see on like fresh meat products, not necessarily a safety date, more along the lines of a date used by grocers, right? They can have this item for sale up to this date. So when you're shopping for meats, it's going to indicate how long that meat product has been sitting on the shelf. You might choose to purchase a meat product that has a longer sell-by date. So you have more days of it being able to be in your refrigerator and can consume that before it needs to be frozen or prepared. Our next date that we're going to talk about is the use by date. So use by and best before or best by are pretty similar. It is the last recommended date for use of product at peak quality. Now, we obviously need to use some good judgment as far as what the food product is that it is being, labeled. And I'm going to share some resources that you guys can utilize to look up certain foods and how long they are good for after certain dates. So I'm going to share that technology with you. And then freeze by date. As I was kind of going through this presentation and looking at some of my own foods, I actually didn't find any products that I have that have freeze by dates. And I'm not sure if you guys have any experience with this label. I could not find anything, but it is simply the date in which the food should be frozen in order to maintain best quality. Have you guys seen anything labeled with a freeze by date? I thought I had seen it maybe on meats, but I couldn't find it. Yeah, meats, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I've seen stuff that says use or freeze by.
Use or freeze by, that's what I said. And I was looking and I could not find it in anything. So thank you for that. And that the technology resources that I'm going to share later on in our presentation will give you some of that information as to when a product should be frozen by. So even if the product doesn't specifically state in it when you purchased it, you can use this resource to make your own determination of when it's going to be best to freeze by. So thank you. All right, so now we've got a poll question. What I want to know from this group today is how many times per month are you grocery shopping? So you're going to see a poll pop up on your screen. Somebody's quick in the chat there. You're going to see a poll pop up on your screen and go ahead and answer to the best of your ability to the answer that matches your best description.
All right, Tina, it looks like everybody answered, and it looks like we've got 1 for 3 to 4, 1 for 4 to 5, and 1 for more than 5 times. So pretty broad across the spectrum.
Yeah, you guys are everywhere. Isabel, did you answer?
I cannot as the host, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, how would you answer?
I would say probably 4 times. 4 to
times?
5. Actually, no, probably more than that, because usually I'll grocery shop and then it'll be like, oh, that doesn't sound good for dinner. I'll just run to the store and get something else.
Yeah,
So
I am. I'm usually 4 times, and then it ends up being more than 4 as well because, oh, I didn't stick to my shopping list. I forgot to put that on there. So now I got to stop again to get to the grocery store for an item. Very good. All right. Thank you guys for sharing that information. All right. So our next tip today, I think, Charlene, that was you that were talking about how challenging it can be to purchase food in smaller amounts, right? So if you decide in the future to do that 30-day food waste challenge, and you took those first 5 to 7 days to take a look at how much food or what individual types of foods are actually being wasted in your house, then you can use that information to say, hey, I know for me personally, I like to buy a tub of yogurt, but I can't tell you the last time, unfortunately, that I actually finished the entire tub of yogurt. So I know for me, right, I could purchase those yogurts in small serving sizes. So I'm going to be more likely to actually get that nutrition from the food product, not waste my food and not put that yogurt into the trash can. And so once you've identified those trends, you can kind of look to kind of strategize how you might be able to purchase those foods in smaller amounts. Is it that you bought this big bag of fresh carrots to make a roast, but then you didn't end up having any other recipes to use up those fresh carrots. In that situation, maybe purchasing a can of carrots could have been an option, or using a frozen bag of carrots could have been an option to decrease the food waste from a big bag of fresh carrots. Because as Charlene stated, you cannot just buy 1 or 2 carrots, right? You got to buy the whole bag, even if you don't necessarily need the whole bag. Another thought that I was thinking is if you live close to, friends or family, and you have the ability to maybe go in on a bag of carrots together, or whatever the item may be, splitting those costs with somebody, so then those fresh carrots can go to a good cause, could be another thought. All right, our next tip is to rely on canned or frozen food when able. And again, just in that same situation that I was talking about, we might not need a whole head of broccoli at one time, but if we buy a frozen bag of broccoli, we can use smaller portions from it, and that bag of broccoli is going to last longer. Now, I say it's a nutritious choice because canned items tend to get a bad reputation for being very high in sodium, and this is true. However, we do have some tips when shopping for canned items and even frozen foods. Frozen vegetables tend to be lower in sodium, or even sodium free if there is not any sauce included and is just the vegetable or the fruit itself. But we have some options here when it talks about reading labels and choosing the options that are labeled as low sodium or no salt added when it comes to canned vegetables. Or even canned beans are a great choice to make meal prep a little bit more convenient and not having to cook a bag of dried beans. Another tip here when it comes to canned vegetables or canned beans in decreasing the sodium content is to rinse those items prior to cooking. When we rinse those items prior to cooking, we can reduce that sodium content by about 40%, which is pretty significant and can be a nutritious choice. When we're looking at fruits as a possible canned or frozen item, when we're looking at canned fruit, we want to choose fruit that is in 100% juice, or choosing the canned fruit item that is labeled as no sugar added. If that's not always a possibility, we can always rinse the canned item off with water as well and decrease any extra sugar content from like a light syrup or a heavy syrup if that was more budget friendly depending upon the sales that week. All right, and then I think that was Amy's iPad that said meal plan, which is hard to stick to. You are correct. It can be challenging. And just like Isabel noted, you might have planned for something, but that particular day, it just didn't sound good. So I understand that things change and come up. But meal planning does not have to be complicated, and it does not have to be super detailed. But if you have a general idea of what meals you actually are going to need that week or 2 weeks, depending upon how frequently you're going to the grocery store, then you can start to identify a plan. So how many meals do I need? Do I actually only need 3 lunch meals this week because I've got a lunch date with somebody, I'm going out with them, so I don't need to worry about that day? How many actually are needed? So you're not under shopping or over shopping for food. And then taking a look at what items do you already have that can be included in this meal plan, right? Well, I've already got frozen chicken in the freezer, so I'm going to utilize that this week. Maybe then you don't have to purchase another meat item. And then what foods are you going to need? Oh, I'm all out of potatoes. I need to put that on my list of things to make full meals for the week. All right, we're on tip number 6, which goes along with tip number 5 that we just talked about. Shop your kitchen first, right? What items are available currently? What items do you have in your refrigerator, in your freezer, in your pantry that need to be utilized, right? The food is there. Let's use it first before having to spend money on additional food items. And then just a tip, I'm thinking about like my yogurt situation again, right? Not purchasing more yogurt until that Shop your kitchen. Yes, very good. Thanks, Isabel. Shop your kitchen first. Purchase yogurt items when, or not yogurt items, but whatever it is that you need to purchase. Purchase those when they're 2/3 empty and not more. So then you don't end up having way too much and not being able to eat it before its expiration date. All right, our next question, go ahead and either use the chat or unmute. What do you, or do you currently use the shopping list at the grocery store? So we know how frequently you guys go grocery shopping. Are you using a shopping list? Either unmute or put it in the chat for me.
Usually.
Usually?
Yes, I do. Of course, I don't always stick to it, but I do have a list.
And you say you don't usually, or sometimes you don't stick to it, as in you don't purchase some of the items, or you purchase above and beyond the items on your shipping list.
I'll find other additional items that
Yeah,
look good at the
look
time.
good. Yeah, exactly. No, just items I may forget to get. So you don't use a shopping list, just items I may forget to get. Oh, okay. So you use a list, not necessarily as a guide for everything that you need, but those commonly forgotten items. I see. Did I get that right? Okay, thank you. Very good. All right. Yes, it's funny to know how we all do things a little bit differently. I always have my shopping list. Sometimes I steer off like Charlene was sharing, but I don't necessarily enjoy grocery shopping. So I like my list because I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to get in the store, I'm getting my items, and I want it as quickly as possible. So we all have our different strategies there. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. So tip number 7, hey, make and stick to a shopping list, right? So as Charlene was sharing, yeah, we might make that shopping list, but we might go off and purchase something that looks good. And when we do those sorts of things, it can lead to a little bit more spending of money that we didn't necessarily plan to do, right? It can lead to more impulse purchases, foods that maybe we didn't have a plan for, maybe more snack type foods that maybe aren't as nutritious, right? I'm sure you guys have all heard the strategy before to not go to the grocery store hungry. So you're not leading to impulsive type purchases and grabbing snack foods. I think when we do that, we don't utilize the food that was actually as part of our plan. And then that stuff goes to waste because we're more attracted to those snack foods. But that's just something that I've experienced personally. All right, our next tip is using the freezer, and this got brought up a lot already, so I appreciate that. That freezer can be a great strategy, but sometimes our freezers aren't as big as others, right? Sometimes we just have that small section attached to our refrigerator and we don't have a chest freezer available, so hopefully we can discuss some strategies there. But the freezer is a perfect option for produce that is getting close to the end of its life of sorts, right? It's getting a little bit older. We need to make a decision. We either got to use it, maybe we don't have a plan for it, so let's freeze it away. If it's vegetables, you might want to blanch those vegetables prior, and by blanch I mean boiling those vegetables in hot water for a minute, rinsing them off with cold water, letting them sit and dry before freezing them away. And I know that MSU Extension has got some great classes available for food preservation if you want to learn how to blanch or can or freeze items properly, as Isabel was sharing, learning how to properly freeze items so they can maintain safety and quality, but also usability. I feel like sometimes I get into a rush when it comes to freezing products, right? And you just put all of your, broccoli into one bag. It was probably 5 or 6 servings worth, but now it's just this one big clump of broccoli that isn't even realistic to do anything with. So taking the time, I know that got mentioned earlier, taking the time to do that in a safe way that is actually going to be convenient in the long run is a worthy cause. Same with berries, right? You get those all in one big chunk, and they're a little bit harder to use. So baking or putting them on a baking sheet in the freezer before you actually put them in your storage container, so they freeze individually, and then putting them in your storage container so they don't clump together is a good trick for that. Using clear storage containers can be a good strategy, whether that's plastic or glass, depending upon how much space you might have in your freezer, or a zip top bag. It can be quite convenient and clear usually, right? And when you're freezing those items, laying them flat, like if you just have this small freezer area, laying them flat to utilize as much space as possible can be a strategy when you don't have the biggest freezer space. And then adding dates to your storage containers or zip top bags. Adding dates lets you know, okay, I put this in here on this date. Usually that's good, as far as quality is concerned, for 6 to 12 months after you've put them into the freezer. And then if they're organized by date. Yes, good. Freezer paper, you're reading ahead. Absolutely. It's one thing that I don't think about very often, and I regret it every time I put meat into the freezer, right? Because it gets those crystals on it. So wrapping meat with your freezer paper first before putting it in the zip top bag can just help protect quality. Since this is a pretty big tip, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and unmute and share maybe some strategies or things that have worked for you in the past when it comes to freezing items.
Anything with a high water content does not freeze well, like cucumbers.
Cucumbers, yeah, those aren't going to go very well. So what could be some other strategies for preserving cucumbers if it's not going to be the freezer?
Oh, that's just buying them in smaller quantities.
Yeah. I know they get so cheap during the summer, right? Or we just get a whole bunch if we're growing our own garden. We've got cucumber abundance. But yeah, pickling is another strategy for preserving those food items, which is a topic in of its own self for sure.
I was gonna say that during COVID we did a video series called Taste It, Don't Waste It, and it was basically how you can use some whether it's fruits or vegetables or grains that are nearing their end of their lives, and if you don't want to freeze them or don't know how to or whatever, some things that you can do to change them into something different that you could enjoy. So for example, stale bread, you don't want to freeze stale bread because stale, right? Unless you're going to toast it or whatever, then it would be fine. But like making croutons out of that stale bread. So kind of changing the first thing and then changing it to something new. So that was something we did.
And somebody says empty the fridge out soup days. Absolutely. I love that you guys I love that these reducing food waste is just one big topic, right? And so all of these tips are kind of getting intermingled. I love it because we're going to talk about how to use leftovers, and soup and stale bread are part of the tip number 10. So you guys are thinking ahead. I love it. A vacuum sealer for freezing. Yes, absolutely. It is quite a good investment if you are going to especially be purchasing in bulk. Bulk meats, right? They can go on sale pretty frequently, and individual portion sizes I think is probably the most important, so they can be convenient and realistic, especially when you're just cooking for 1 or 2 people. Very good. Yes, thank you guys. I appreciate that. Isabel, did you want to share a little bit more when you were talking about learning how to safely freeze items? Would you add anything else to those tips from tip number 8?
I think that was really good. I would say the only thing is when you are trying to figure out like how long something lasts for, or how, soon after you put in the freezer and whatnot, to use credible sources explaining the safety dates. So like the FDA and the USDA, they that's like the thing that they focus on is food safety, one of the things they focus on. And so getting the tips from them rather than just some blog on how to safely, use this food or to freeze this food is a great way to make sure that you're staying safe when it comes to food, because food safety is no joke. Food safety is a big thing. And there's a lot of things that we hear from, old wives' tales or, blogs about these other things. Like I know one of the things that I have heard from just like a blog is that if you're using like raw chicken and you are breading it, that you can freeze the breadcrumbs, which is not true, like the used breadcrumbs. So there's been some, blogs and wives' tales and stuff for these what they say are safe food practices, but in reality are not. So, if you're going to be using breadcrumbs and dipping raw chicken into the breadcrumbs, you need to throw those breadcrumbs out and not freeze them or, do anything with them. So I would say, just for the food safety wise, making sure you're looking to credible sources to make sure that you are safely eating, because nobody wants to get sick.
Yeah, especially off food crumbs that has got chicken juices in them. Yes. And that's another good point, Isabel, that you make, right? So like when you do have ingredients that you need to make a recipe like a breaded chicken, right? Portioning out the appropriate amount of breadcrumbs that you're actually going to need to make that breaded chicken, so you don't have a lot of extra breadcrumbs left over. Good point. Thank you. All right, so as Isabel was talking about, they're using credible resources when it comes to food preservation. I was learning how to can in the last couple of years, and I was doing a lot of research on proper canning process, and boy, that's quite intense, right? But I realized that there were definitely lots of people out there saying lots of different things about food preservation and food safety, and the USDA by far was the #1 resource to use when it came to that. And in this Food Keeper app and website, it is from the US government, so it is a credible resource, and it is an app that is free to download on your phone, or you can go to the foodsafety.gov website and take a look at the Food Keeper feature on their website. And what this technology or resource will do for you is help you understand the proper storage process of certain food items. And it's quite extensive. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to show you some screenshots from the foodsafety.gov Food Keeper feature of that website, so you can understand how to use that technology to your benefit to decrease your own home food waste.
And I do want to mention one more thing very quickly. Yeah. I cannot remember if it's USDA or FDA, but one of them actually has a chat option where if you are, curious about a certain, food item and how long it lasts and how to safely store and stuff, you can actually chat them and then they will be able to get that information for you. So if you're curious how long, I don't know, an open jar of peanut butter will last, you can go to either, I can't remember if it's, I'll look it up and send it to you guys, USDA or FDA, and you can actually chat them and they will get that information to you. So another piece of technology there.
Awesome. Thanks, Isabel. All right, so like I said, this is just a screenshot from the foodsafety.gov website from the Food Keeper feature. So you can see when you go to the Food Keeper section of that website, you can just browse by category, the different types of food. This is just a snippet of what's available. There were more options, but just for an example, I chose in doing this example to click on the deli and prepared food items. And then from there, it gave me all this list of different types of prepared foods. such as casseroles, chicken salad, cooked pasta. How long do those food items actually keep for? I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head, so I thought this was a really great feature. I went ahead and selected egg salad. I don't know how long egg salad is good for actually when you prepare it and you've got it in your refrigerator. So it gives you some information on that, right? So for freshness and quality, this item should be consumed within, and it's saying that if it's refrigerated from either the date of purchase or the date that you prepared for, it's going to be good for 3 to 4 days, which is pretty common for prepared items. And they let you know if frozen is an acceptable option. And so they're letting you know that egg salad is not going to be recommended for a freezer item, which we would expect that to be true. So hopefully you guys will be able to use that technology as just part of your toolkit to help you guys reduce your food waste at home. I thought it was pretty handy as I was looking through it. I hadn't heard of it before, so I was happy to roll past that. All right, and then our final tip of the day, which you guys have already started talking about, is getting creative with leftovers, right? What do we do with all those things? Yeah, we can freeze them. Yeah, we could think of another preservation. We've talked about canning just briefly. We talked about pickling just briefly. Again, those are topics of them, they're a different day, but what else can we do with these items? So Isabel was sharing, okay, yeah, we've got some stale bread. Let's make some croutons, right? Make some croutons for a salad that we might put on our meal plan for a lunch option. Who was that talking about making clean out the fridge soup days? So yeah, no, that's another option. Or a stir fry, right? We've got this leftover broccoli, got leftover chicken or beef from another recipe earlier. We could whip up a stir fry pretty quickly as well. Maybe you've got some extra vegetables. You don't want to take the time to, blanch them or freeze them. So maybe we're going to just cut them up and we're going to put salads on our meal plan for the lunch options this week to use up some of those extra vegetables so they don't go to waste, like cucumbers, since you can't refreeze those. And then extra fruit, you can make a smoothie. What else do you guys got? What other ideas can you use with leftovers?
One thing that I do is if I'm doing like a baked good, I will, shred some, not super great looking apples into them, or mashing them up and adding them to like a whole wheat waffle. So if I have some strawberries that are starting to get past their prime, mash them up and kind of make a little like a fruit sauce out of them. So lots of different things you can do.
Yeah, that was great. And then I see in the chat, we're talking about banana bread. Oh yeah, so many bananas go into banana bread in my house too. What else do you guys got? I love to learn from other people too. I'm so like, if I were doing the 30-day food waste trend, leftovers is number one for me, unfortunately. Like I struggle getting creative with leftovers. We all have our flaws. Anything else? So in the chat, we see, I used to feel old veggies and fruit to make, feed old vegetables and fruit to your guinea pigs, but they're no longer with us. Oh, I'm sorry that your guinea pigs aren't with you anymore. Yeah, so sometimes you might have an animal that might eat some of those scrap foods, right? Some fruits and vegetables are safe to feed to our dogs, or my parents used to raise pigs, so they used to get a lot of scraps. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I said I usually just eat them the next day for lunch.
Do you just eat them that day for lunch?
The next day, yeah.
Yeah, the next day. Yep. Yeah, that's good. Yes. Some people love leftovers and some people just struggle, and I struggle. I admitted that. So thank you guys for sharing. Hopefully you guys learned some new ideas on what to do with leftovers. All right, we already answered that question. So we're coming to the end of our presentation, and now I want to share with you guys those 3 different recipes that I am offering to you for less than $3 per serving. I opted to go with a breakfast, lunch, and dinner option. And so we're starting with a breakfast, which is an overnight oatmeal with berries. It's got a low-fat milk, fat-free Greek yogurt for some extra protein, a little sweetness from honey, cinnamon, and vanilla. You've got your rolled oats, and then we've got frozen raspberries. Does anybody have any experience with overnight oatmeal? Anybody love it?
Yep.
Yep. I know you can make overnight oatmeal to be lots of different options. What's the combination that you love?
I actually like putting in like the peanut butter protein powder
Yes.
and then like the little mini chocolate chips in the morning.
Ooh, yeah, sounds decadent.
Yeah, usually with like some chia seeds and stuff too.
For some
Kinda
extra
up the protein
protein
level.
and fiber. Yes, very good. Very creative. Okay, so some peanut butter, protein powder, some chia seeds, a few little mini chocolate chips. I love that. That sounds delicious. We can make lots of different options, right? We could do blueberries with slivered almonds and chia seeds. There's so many
Apple and
different
cinnamon.
varieties. Go ahead.
Apple and cinnamon.
Oh yes, apple and cinnamon. The perfect fall overnight oatmeal. And so we can just see that these are commonly the common ingredients that most of us probably have in our pantry, or that we can use up maybe from the freezer if we've got some frozen extra fruits, right? This can all be modified. So maybe you don't have the raspberries. That doesn't mean you can't make this, right? Maybe you've got strawberries in the freezer. Maybe you've got a mixed berry. Maybe you got a blueberry. Maybe you got a mango. Any other different types of fruits can be used in this recipe. All right, so we'll take a look at the lunch option that I'm offering to you, which is a 3-can chili. And this is where we talk about using those canned goods, right? They're economical, they're convenient, and we can still purchase nutritious canned items, low sodium, no salt added. We can rinse the items if we can't find the low sodium version. So we can still make good nutritious meals from canned items. And this is just an example. It is a meatless chili. So if you're trying to do more plant-based or plant-forward recipes, this is an easy one. Got a can of whatever type of bean you want. Maybe you don't like pinto beans. You can use black beans or red beans or vice versa. You've got a can of low sodium corn, or you can always use some frozen corn in this option as well. A can of crushed tomatoes and some chili powder. Pretty easy option for a chili. Again, just using pantry items that we might already have in the pantry or in the freezer if you've opted for a frozen corn. And I do realize that all 3 of my options are actually meatless. And so lentils, I don't know if anybody has any experience with lentils. Unmute and share if you do. I know I don't cook them very often. I think when I did in the past, I tended to overcook them, unfortunately. Anybody have any experience with lentils? Oh, lentil sloppy joes. Love that. Sounds delicious. A pescatarian, yeah. So lots of beans and legumes in that diet. I see you unmuted. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I have one pressure cooker lentil soup recipe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is it? Broth based with a bunch of vegetables and lentils?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, pressure cooker is great for dried options, isn't it? Dried lentils, beans.
Yeah.
All right, so this
gotta love the Instant Pot.
Yes, the Instant Pot, very good. Very good. All right, well, you guys have access to all of these recipes, or you will have access to all of these recipes on the Bronson Eats website. You have that link in your email that you received yesterday for today's class, and it's also listed here as well. We're going to have a summary of today's class and the 3 recipes available on that website within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So check back so you can have access to those recipes if any of those looked delicious to you. So I want to hear from you guys. What is one thing you learned today that you are going to use in the upcoming week? So either put that in the chat or unmute. So what is one thing you learned today that you will use in the next week? Freezer paper. Very good. I'm glad you took that one away. The food waste challenge. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. Various
Yeah,
states.
I agree on the food
The food
waste.
waste challenge. Yeah, I thought that was a good tip, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? You're
Yeah,
just,
and actually I'm looking at the Food Keeper app right now too.
oh, very good. Yes. And that's, that Save the Food, shop your own pantry before buying more. Absolutely. That savethefood.com website actually had lots of recipe ideas as well, on how to incorporate, foods that are getting a little bit older, right, into different food options. So I know I didn't spend a lot of time looking at that, but that was a pretty good resource for recipes as well. So, so Food Keeper app, freezer paper, shop in your own pantry. I love that you guys took away something from today's class. So thank you guys for sharing that. I hope that that's helpful. So just in summary, today we learned the impact that food waste can have on your home food budget and the environment as a whole when it comes to the resources that are put into the production of our food. We discussed 10 different tips to decrease food waste, and then we reviewed those 3 recipes that cost less than $3 per serving. And as I mentioned, you guys will have access to those on that Bronson Eats website in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And there's the savethefood.com website. So I thank you guys all so much for being here and participating. I really love that. Thank you. And please fill out the survey. The survey link is in your chat. If you would like to complete that now, or you have the survey link in your email that you received yesterday as well. Again, I thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Bye.